Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today I wanted to kind of tackle something that's a little more light-hearted and more fun. Or not even tackle it, but just like bring it to you guys. Mostly because the last couple of weeks have been kind of miserable stuff that I've been covering on the Monday and Friday shows. Just because it's been what's happening in the world, and you know, we had the huge fire in London the other night at the time of recording, which is troubling to say the least. And there's an awful lot of stuff that sucks in the world at the moment, on a political scale, on a war and conflict kind of scale, on people just suffering, and I've talked about that a fair amount. But considering the video that I did on Monday was about a topic in regards to video games and the kind of the way that people perceive it as an issue and whatever else, I kind of wanted to go and take a look at E3, considering that in amongst all of the stuff with the UK election and the fire that broke out and all the stuff with Trump and all the stuff around Brexit and all of these other things, E3 was stuck slap bang in the middle of it, just pumping out interesting stuff for people who like gaming. And so for my sanity, and just because there's some stuff in here that I kind of want to give my take on and that I want to kind of bring to the fore, I wanted to come in and touch on this first. Now, actually, something that's kind of come to my attention post E3 is the guys that do Warframe, Digital Extremes, have started or have come out with this new project called Keystone, which seems to be a first-person shooter, team-focused or team shooter, with a very kind of 1970s sci-fi aesthetic, and it's called Keystone. And I've signed up for it for the alpha and whatever else, but ultimately, because as I've said before, there's no point in getting super attached to one game necessarily. But on top of that, as with some of the things that Paladins has been doing to annoy me lately, with some of their balance stuff and some of their odd kind of trying to use characters to push a meta instead of trying to encourage styles of play, I'm really interested to see what these guys do, considering what they did with Warframe and where this might go. Yeah, because they're a very talented team. They've got a lot going for them. They're but not just at DE, the guys that are focused on Warframe, because I would imagine that they've not necessarily split their team up all that much, because dealing with two on-running live update kind of systems would be something of an effort. But I would imagine that there are some key players involved between projects that actually make a big difference and the help the whole studio run the way it does. And so I'm looking forward to this. I mean, as I've said before, I'm not a big PvE kind of only fan, but as said, I have played Team Fortress 2 and got into it. I've got into Paladins, as you guys have seen with how much I've been bringing to the channel with it. But this sounds really interesting to me. Now, there's a link down in the description there for that allows you to sign up, create an account, and whatever else. It's completely free to play, as Warframe and whatever else are anyway. So you got nothing to lose by doing it. But also, it is the more people that we get to use that link, the more likely we are to gain access as a collective, as it were, into the closed alpha. And so, as a result, you go ahead if you're interested. If you've enjoyed the stuff that I've done with Paladins or with Warframe in the past, then this may very well be one of the next things that I kind of go and take a look at next. And whether or not they'll allow me to record or anyone to record outside of a very select few during things like the closed alphas and closed betas and things like that, who knows? But as soon as I want to take a look at this personally, and so as soon as it becomes a a thing that I can also bring to you guys, it's probably what I'm going to do. So if you're interested, if you would be interested in joining in, seeing how the game plays along with me, then go ahead and use that little referral link down below. But moving on now to actually the stuff that was at E3 and the stuff that stood out to me, the stuff that I'm excited for. And then I'll give a couple of other comments on some other bits and pieces towards the end and how I felt the actual press conferences and stuff went down, because I've watched, I might have skipped through them over some of the dull parts where they're just talking and talking and talking about how wonderful their team was or whatever else, because some of those press conferences were just incredibly long. But here are some of the things to start off with that really stood out to me. Now, the first thing, and this is one that's kind of polarized people to a degree, is Assassin's Creed Origins. Now, this is a game that I love the Assassin's Creed series. Unfortunately, I've only played up to Black Flag because it was up to the time that Black Flag came out that I was kind of putting all my money into setting myself up as my own business and moving away from doing those kinds of things. And then, of course, after Rogue, it jumped straight onto the next set of consoles, and unfortunately that's a substantial investment to just play them console wise, or again, I still didn't necessarily have the access to them for PC either. But I'm still excited for these games coming out. At some point in the future, I want to sit down and play through Rogue, Unity, Chronicles, Syndicate. I want to play through all these other Assassin's Creed games, because I love the premise. I love the idea. They've been shaky at times. I really enjoyed the moment-to-moment gameplay in number 3, but I will agree with everybody else when they say that the story gets shaky after after no time at all, really. But either way, I'm looking forward to this, and especially considering that they've taken into account the time period with some of the weapons and things. Granted, they've got a level up system now that's slightly different, and you've got more of a gear collection system instead of just going and purchasing the next thing. But it kind of makes sense. It's something that I don't mind about the game. A few more RPG elements might be interesting. Part of me wonders if this is going to be a game that shows the connection between the supposed kind of broad Ubisoft universe with Far Cry and Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed all kind of being interconnected with the Beastmaster skills that we see with the Hawk in the gameplay footage. But it looked kind of sleek to me. It looked like it was functional. It looked like it worked. It looked like it's going to be a setting that I'm going to absolutely adore, because I loved ancient Egypt as a child, and I still very much have a huge interest in it. So I'd love to see what they do with it, and walking around some of the environments, learning about them the same way that they had all those little info snippets in the previous Assassin's Creed games, where you could learn about the people and the things and the places and all that kind of stuff. I love just going through those after the fact and doing the collectible stuff as well, the puzzles and things. Love the AC series, really looking forward to this game. But in regards to kind of investigations, working things out, and puzzle solving, we've got Call of Cthulhu, and you've seen me wearing the Cthulhu shirts that I've got, the Cthulhu mythos bits and pieces, and I'm a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan. So seeing this game and seeing that it actually seems to want to do Lovecraft properly, like the proper kind of cosmicist, completely incomprehensible, huge, vast, uncaring universe from the H.P. Lovecraft stories with all the creatures that entails. I'm really looking forward to this game. I mean, it's still very vague. They've talked about a few systems. They've talked about relationships with other characters and the way that you interact with them. They've talked about your ongoing investigations. Phobias and sanity and stuff like that is all going to be in the game. So I'm really looking forward to this, as much as kind of from what I've read and seen so far, there are a lot of kind of elements that are a bit kind of vague at the moment. I'm still really looking forward to it and following the progress of that one. The next one though is more story driven. Again, there weren't a huge number of multiplayer games that really stood out to me at E3, but there are a couple that we'll get to in a minute. But Detroit Become Human. The last two trailers that we've got for this, I think her name is Kara, this character here, and we had her in like two trailers. We've had an FBI negotiator android in another trailer who was showing kind of the branching stuff, and then we had another two in this, one of which was called Marcus, and I can't remember the other one's name. It was a girl, and they were kind of leading an android uprising, and I have a feeling that this is going to be a very kind of thoughtful, not necessarily slow paced, but kind of contemplatory affair in regards to playing. And I've really enjoyed games like this in the past, but the subject matter here, the fact that it's very sci-fi and it's quite grounded in a lot of things that even large institutions and well-known people are discussing in regards to AI, in regards to the way that might progress with us as a species. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing how they handle this, and also the branching story structure does seem really interesting. Again, it might be one of these games that I maybe enjoy watching rather than actually buying and kind of playing myself, purely because of the branching structure, and I would imagine there are going to be a fair number of people playing through this game. You know, actually sitting down and watching the different people play through the games and seeing where their choices go and where it leads them, so that I could maybe watch 2 or 3 series that are all like leading me down different paths, instead of me trying to play it all myself and see see how my different actions take place. And in fact, that's a thing that we'll get onto later. There are a lot of games that were shown off at E3 this year that I feel are maybe not necessarily something that I would like to play, but are things that I would love to watch. Yeah, for instance, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. It's a game that I've been watching on YouTube. I've really enjoyed the watching the people play. The same with Overwatch. It's a game that seems like I probably enjoy playing it, but it has less to kind of hold me than maybe Paladins, because of the systems that I can work within the game to a degree. And so seeing that, there are a few games that I'm thinking these are much more for me to watch than for me to play. I'll join in on the community. I'll be interested in hearing what people say. I'll learn the stuff. I can still tell you kind of the ways to play characters in Overwatch, even though I've only played the game myself about twice for maybe 10 minutes a piece. But like I really like the idea of some of these games catering for that as well, which again, that game may be one of the ones that doesn't cater for it necessarily, but one which has a lot of potential for it. But anyway, moving on, we've got another couple of epic titles. I'm looking forward to the God of War games. I've not really played that many of the God of War games all the way through myself. It was kind of one of those games where I would go around a mate's house, they would have it, and we'd end up going kind of like, okay, keep going until you die, hand the controller on kind of thing. But the storyline was kind of interesting. It was a very, very big cinematic kind of game that allowed for a lot of cool moments in it, and now they seem to have moved it forward. The game seems to have matured in a lot of ways. It's less cartoony, but still very visceral and action focused and over the top. It's I feel like this is a good direction to take it in as well, and I very much kind of look forward to seeing how this goes, considering that also they've got the kid character. There's the mystery around who the kid's mother is, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of stuff in this game that has been rolled in over the kind of God of War basic structure that I think only adds from what we've seen so far. So even though I probably won't play it again, I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops and maybe hearing more about the story. Now, a game that I would have really liked to play, but and which has been talked about a lot and shown off a fair amount around this E3, is Fortnite. And now, originally, I thought this was going to be a free-to-play thing because it seem to have like a kind of money store with loot boxes and stuff like that in it. But from what I can tell, there's a it's very much a kind of pre-order, like pay to play kind of game, which kind of actually put me off because I actually quite like the free to play model, yeah, in a lot of ways as long as it's done properly. And so, because it allows for communities to grow where they wouldn't otherwise be able to, it allows for like an awful lot of diversity in the player base. It allows for people to gain traction in a game before they actually decide to spend money on it or not. You know, I really like that aspect of free to play. Yes, it has its issues, and yes, the monetization of certain things, for example, you know, if you're buying better guns that are statistically better than your opponents, then it's very much pay to win kind of thing, and that kind of sucks. But if it's cosmetics, if it's kind of random chance loot boxes for a new class or something like that, or whatever else, then I feel like that's fine. Yeah, like I quite like that idea as a way of funding a game, because then it means that I can invest in it at my own speed. I can put money towards it if I feel that it's worth my time, and if it's worth it otherwise, you know. And this is what I was hoping for this game, but it doesn't seem to be the case. And it's a shame, because it seems like a mix of kind of like Orcs Must Die, a building game kind of like Conan Exiles or any other kind of survival game out there, and it's a big co-op kind of zombie smashing game, which, you know, I would have really enjoyed the idea of this game, but and I do enjoy the idea of this game, and it looked really good in the gameplay that they were showing off. But at the same time, for I feel like some games are very, very well suited to the free to play model, and the fact that this isn't free to play does actually turn me off a little bit, because it means that the people that I'm engaging with are also going to be like, I might buy the game and then not spend anything else if I can earn everything else from the loot boxes or from whatever else is going on through the game. Yeah, and so it might, if I bought this, it would be a case of, okay, well, I'll just come along. But I know full well that there are whales out there who have far too much expendable income, who will just go and throw it at the game, and so as a result, there won't be the community where you've got the people who are just playing because they love the game and they're just working on it. There'll be a community of people who are, some of them have bought the game and some of them have done a little bit, some of them have bought the game and they've done a lot in regards to the cash store, and as a result, it doesn't really leave you much space for a very casual person to come in, just play the game for playing the game. Or at least that's my feelings and my thoughts on it, you know. Because that's what I've seen with a lot of games, especially MMOs, that I've jumped in on, and I play an awful lot of MMOs. I bounce between them to one extent or another, and you know, it's kind of an interesting thing to me that they've decided seemingly to not go that way, considering the pre-order on the website and all of the other stuff that's there that seems to be money focused rather than whatever else. So, you know, I'm interested to see how this goes, whether or not, because it does look like a good game, whether or not a big community will build up around it, or whether or not it'll be a kind of like, yeah, it was a thing, and then people kind of drift off and forget about it because of the lack of accessibility compared to other games that do very similar things that are free to play. For example, Orcs Must Die, Unchained, I think it's called, which is free to play and allows you to go in, maybe less of the building and kind of exploration elements in there, but let's face it, there are an awful lot of people out there who will gravitate towards that over this purely because of the fact that there's no limit to entry. But I'm still going to look forward to that one to one extent or another, even if it's just to watch other people play it and it's interesting. The next one is Sea of Thieves, and this year seems to be a big thing for kind of like on-the-sea pirate games. And we've had this on and off over the last few years, especially with the kind of well-received kind of attitudes towards the boat stuff, the ship stuff in the Assassin's Creed games, and so on and so forth. We'll get onto that in a minute. And also games like Worlds Adrift or Guns of Icarus or whatever else, where it's very crew focused on a ship doing a thing. Blackwater even, that's more recent. But Sea of Thieves looks really good. The thing that I really like about this is that it's not purely PvP, because a lot of these other games that have gone with the kind of like people on a ship going to do a thing, and it's either like a PvP objective or it's an objective, the objective is purely deathmatch focused or something like that, and that turns me off. I'm not someone that likes PvP. I like working with people, I like achieving objectives, but I'm not a person that really likes sitting in the PvP space and just killing folks because why not? That's the only thing to do. And so watching the like hour-long live stream that I think IGN did on this, where they were playing with one of the devs, I thought that this looked great, not just because of the complexities and the way that you needed to work with people to run the ship, but also the fact that a lot of their objectives that they were getting, where they were getting chapters almost in a story, and they were having objectives to go and find treasure, and there were bases, and they were all very open. You had to go from a port to find a thing, to then find a thing, to then find a thing, and then come back, potentially. Whilst also, yes, there are players out there who are going to attempt to attack you. There are players, though, that you could walk up to, converse with, and then maybe work together to find a thing. It looked really interesting, and there seemed to be as much of a PvP element, sure, but there was definitely a PvE element in there, which is what kind of drew me towards it. And the fact that you had those systems that were both cartoony, with like loading yourself into a cannon and firing yourself at another ship, or firing yourself into the sea, but also where you had the ship filling up with water from where the holes were, and you had to actively bail the water out. There was no pump, there was no other system like that. You actually had to make the journey down with a bucket and remove the water. I kind of liked that about the game. It made it more immersive and it made it more interesting whilst it was still fun. Yeah? And so I'm looking forward to that. But then talking about the Assassin's Creed games and about pirate games in general, we've now got something from Ubisoft which basically seems to take the Assassin's Creed ship play from Black Flag and from Assassin's Creed 3 and throw it straight out there as an almost PvP kind of team versus team arena kind of it's like just a PvP arena game but with boats, and it looked cool, it looked interesting. There were sea shanties, seemingly some of the same sea shanties from Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but it looked interesting, it looked kind of fun, because again, I really enjoyed the ship stuff in both of those games as much as I enjoyed the rest of the Assassin's Creed game generally. But again, I'm interested to see how this one pans out, because you've got a lot of other games that do the kind of serious stuff, and yes, it's not one person per ship as this seems to be. It's very much a crew per ship. But I don't know, I'm interested to see how this goes. Will the one person per ship as a part of a flotilla be more attractive to people than the kind of like going out as an individual member of a crew working together and making it work? I'll be interested to see how this pans out, because I feel like this is like that other game that's come out, or has it come out? Dreadnought, where it's big spaceships having battles like this. I feel like this is very, very similar, apart from the fact that this is actual ships, on the water. But anyway, moving away from pirates, we've got a last couple of big games that I want to just mention here. And this one, SpiderMan, this stood out to me as possibly one of the best games on show, and the one that I'm most looking forward to. I have enjoyed some of the Spider-Man games. I'm a big Marvel fan. I enjoy my comic books, and Spider-Man was one that my brother and I collected when we were kids for a while. So yeah, am I looking forward to this? Very much so. It looked very, very nice. There seemed to be, as a superhuman, as Spider-Man, you seem to be able to choose the pace of the combat up until a very specific kind of story element. The thing that stood out to me that really kind of sat with this was the quick time events. Didn't seem too much, but didn't seem too little necessarily. But considering how gamers stereotypically hate quick time events. I was surprised that they showed that off straight away in the gameplay that they showed off. But also they had the Miles Morales teaser, which suggests that this is more of a comic book focused game than a movie focused game, and it's just playing into the current kind of happiness and excitement around Spider-Man Homecoming and stuff like that. It's just a character that's re-emerged as a thing that's being used. But this was probably the biggest game there for me that I just felt happy about. Yeah, there are a lot of games here that I'm like, yeah, this seems really good, but, or yeah, if they can pull off what they've said, then this is going to be amazing. This one just stood out to me as, this is what I want. This looks good, it looks sleek, it looks like it's functional, it looks like it's fun, it looks like it has an interesting story that includes characters that maybe we've not seen in games or even or on movies or anything like that before, from the Spider-Man universe, and so I'm interested to see how it rolls with it. You know, especially if it takes the Miles Morales character and the Peter Parker character, puts them into more of where they are in the comic books at the moment, and then sees how kind of that story expands. I would love to know more about that. But the next one's a sequel. It's a sequel to a game that I actually have installed on my PC and that I love very, very much for various reasons, and that's State of Decay 2. Now, I was actually thinking that when I finish one of the series, possibly Subnautica, because Subnautica will come to an end once the game is finally released in full, and we can do all of the stuff that we want to do in it, and we can go through the story and we can finish off everything. I was thinking that State of Decay 1 might be a game that then I go back to and do a playthrough of as kind of a survival game, as a game again that we can learn from in regards to our resource management, you know, in regards to how we're going to interact with things in the world around us. You know, it was another game that allows for that kind of element of learning and thoughtfulness and objective setting that I really enjoyed. That and the fact that it was made by some guys that left ArenaNet, who made Guild Wars. Guild Wars 1, one of my favourite games ever. Guild Wars 2 could have been one of my favourite games ever if they hadn't messed it up. I'll do a video on that at some point in the future as kind of a passion project, I'm sure. But this game, the one big issue that I had with State of Decay 1 was the shooting mechanics. Yeah? Because you had... it seemed to be that the controls were very, very Xbox focused. And so as a result, they did not, for me at any rate, translate too well to mouse and keyboard. And that was a bit of a pain in the arse for me when you got a rifle. You felt that you were able to maybe stretch your legs a little bit more and search for some more supplies and do some more things for people because you had ammo and whatever else. But just because of the shooting mechanics, it became clanky and tiresome to try and do that. You know, and so... whilst you guys have seen me both be a great shot and whiff shots like anyone's business, you know, the gunplay in this game is going to be important to me. And from what we saw in the gameplay trailers, the gunplay does seem a lot more streamlined. It seems like it's got a lot more movement to it and a lot more freedom to it. So, you know, I'm hopeful for it because I'm looking forward to getting back into this universe, especially with the advances that they will have made, you know, and I'm really hopeful to like see how this game pans out, what extra things it does, whether or not it's more of the same but better, whether or not it's more of the same but better and they've done other stuff with it. You know, I want to see how this goes because again, they're developers who've got a great track record so far. And you know, I'm hopeful, especially from the fact that the trailers and things that they showed at E3 were all gameplay. There was none of this stuff where it's just like, oh, here's a cinematic. Oh, this seems incredibly scripted. It was scripted, sure, but at the same time, it seemed like it was all just in-game. There were no animations or timings that were just seemingly weird. It was just like these people seem to have played a game and then they've narrated over the top of it to a degree. Yeah, and I really liked that because that was one of the issues that I had with one of the other games that I'll mention a little later. The next one that stood out to me is something that I want because I wanted a game like this a while ago that seems to have disappeared into obscurity. Either that or I just missed it. But Strange Brigade. And now we had a game that I think it was a couple of years ago at E3 that was brought up, and it was called, I think, Hunt, where you had a group of kind of Victorian hunters traveling the world mostly. I believe the level that they showed off was like a swamp witch in a Louisiana bayou, and it was very much a kind of, you take on the role of a Van Helsing-esque kind of character, and you go and you hunt through these various areas and take down the big bads. You know, it seemed really interesting like that. And this game seems to be very much the same, where you've got a group of misfits of one sort or another being put together as a special corps to go and deal with, I mean, in the trailer we see zombies and we see some other weird creatures. And so, you know, this just seems like a fun co-op shooter, the sorts that, you know, of the sort that we've had a fair number of, but also, you know, we could always do with more interesting themes. And so, you know, colonialist British Empire kind of rolling forward with this, you know, and having places that are maybe less dingy and so on, like the colourful backdrop there of a more kind of arid, deserty kind of location. You know, I'm looking forward to it. It sounds and looks good to me. The next one is another game that I'm looking forward to more watching other people play than play myself, and that's The Evil Within 2, because I watched a few different people play the first Evil Within and the story and the DLC that went for it, and it was an interesting story. It had an awful lot of interesting imagery. I really enjoyed the kind of horror elements to it, and the way that they were woven in, and the way that it felt to me, just in watching, granted, but it felt to me very much like a kind of surrealist return to Resident Evil in various ways. And so, you know, but there were elements of the story that were very confusing to people. There were things that I saw in it that I was like, maybe. You know, but that might just be the style of game and the fact that I just don't play that many of them because they don't engage me so much. But, you know, I am looking forward to see what happens with the characters next, how it moves forward, what exactly is going on, because it seems to be, again, the same characters, but maybe after the last game or whatever else. So I'm looking forward to seeing the development here. And then the last game that I'm very excited for, but again, we didn't see... From what I've read and seen in the past, we didn't see a huge amount of new stuff at the time, and that's Vampyr. Vampyr, because it's a really interesting kind of game that stands out in its own right. I mean, I feel like, yes, there has been a return to this kind of idea with games like The Order 1866, but again, like, I really love Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and I've been waiting for another game that gives me the same kind of feeling within a genre that I really, really love, with the whole kind of horror action thing going on. You know, I've been wanting to get back into a world like that, and there's a huge kind of shortage of games like that do it well in regards to both the interaction and the social elements of, say, vampires or whatever else. As well as doing interesting combat, interesting mechanics, an interesting way to make the game actually function. You know, and so I'm really interested in this, especially considering that they've suggested that there's a finite number of people in the city that you're in, within Whitechapel, and that you have to basically manage who you're feeding on, how you're feeding on them, what you're doing, because it will ripple throughout the rest of the community. I really like that idea. Okay, so those are the big games that I just kind of wanted to touch on here in regards to the things that stood out to me as games that I can, maybe be a little worried about or a little skeptical of in various places, but that I'm willing to just go, yes, I'm looking forward to these. Now I want to talk about a couple of things that I noticed otherwise. Firstly, especially with Xbox, they showed off a lot of smaller games, and it was like, here are our smaller games, or games that are coming to Xbox. And obviously you had Conan Exiles in there, which I was going to do another video and try some of the editing stuff that I've been trying to work out the last week or so. So I was gonna do another video on the Conan Exiles stuff, considering I've been playing Conan Exiles with you guys anyway. And you guys have also been like incredibly keen on that, considering that some of my most viewed videos to date have been those. So again, thank you very much for actually taking the time to watch those, guys. But the other games that kind of stood out, there are a few that were like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like Black Desert Online coming to consoles. I've been playing Black Desert Online now only for a little while, relatively recently, because it was in the Steam sale, and it's a game that I was interested in playing anyway. As I very much enjoy kind of the role-playing game elements and the play however you like elements of games, and so considering Black Desert Online advertised a lot of those things, I was really happy when I actually started playing it to find that that was actually the case. In fact, it's a little overwhelming how much there is actually in the game, which is great. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that's received on Xbox. As much as I won't be playing it on Xbox, because PC Master Race all the way to one degree or another. I'm interested to just see how it will be received, considering how it was received when it moved from just their general PC market from the dev into Steam, and then it'll be interesting to see the carry on into Xbox as well. But there were a couple of others that kind of confused me more, like Ark, for instance, coming to console, and I was like, why? I mean, obviously you're going to want to kind of sell it to as many people as possible in as many places as possible. I get that. You want to earn the money on it. But I was looking at it and I was going, but who's going to buy this? Because if you were interested in Ark, then surely you would have bought Ark a while ago, because it's been out on PC for ages. And so, as well as like the expansions of various sorts for it as well, and the very vibrant modding community for the game also. So I'm like, if it looks as good, if not better, on a PC potentially, if it can work better on a PC potentially because you can mess around with it to your specification, if you've already had it for a long time on PC and there's a very active modding community on PC that allows you to expand your game into forever just based off other people's mods and work that they want to do, that's a... I don't really necessarily understand where they think they're going to get a lot of people from for that game, is all. That was one of the ones that stood out as a surprise to me. I mean, there were a few other games that really stood out as interesting and fun little things, like there was Ashen and a couple of others. But the big one, the one that everyone got really excited about, was Anthem from BioWare. And, I've not put up a picture here because it was just like, I wanted to only really kind of capitalize for images on the ones that I'm really kind of like, yeah, this looks like something I'm really interested in, really want to get into, even if I'm a bit dubious about it. But Anthem was an odd one because, again, like, you've got Warframe, you've got Destiny, you've got these team-based shooters, and this game seemed to have a lot going for it, but it also seemed to pull up a lot of really weird, interesting stuff. Because the thing that really bugged me about it was that you had some effectively a marketing guy talking over the top of the video, the gameplay video that they did. And then the people who they had voicing the characters, voicing the players in the footage, sounded nothing like any gamer I've ever heard before. Mostly because the stuff that they were saying just didn't add up necessarily in terms of intensity, in terms of interest, in terms of the stuff that they were actually doing in the game. It all seemed very flat and all very fake. And of course, again, this is coming from BioWare with EA, and EA has been a pain in the ass forever, and BioWare recently has taken a knock to its reputation with Andromeda, and the fact that even though it's a different kind of office, a different studio that's working on the game, if you've got higher ups at BioWare who are still making executive decisions to go, don't bother polishing that game, then especially a game like this where it's a departure from what BioWare has done normally, it worries me a bit. Does it look good? Yes, but also, can they kind of stick with that? Yeah, can they provide and give everything that they actually show in that trailer? Yeah, because they seem to have very story-focused, kind of character interactive storytelling from the dude that they show at the front, who's like, guys, his face looks okay. His face looks pretty good with the animations. This isn't going to be another Mass Effect Andromeda. We'll forget about that for now. Sure. It's going to be this big, persistent world kind of thing. It's going to have a lot of stuff going on in it. It's, whatever else. And I'm like, okay, fine, sure. That all seems good. If this is genuine gameplay instead of it being part scripted, then okay, then fine. I'll concede that this looks fun moment to moment. But then, what else? Then they show off some the exosuits fighting, and again, some of the way that happens isn't realistic. It's not something that a player would do. It's not something a player would say. It all seems very all over the place. There's this divide between what they think they want us to hear and what we're actually looking at, and it's an odd contrast. But then the thing that stood out to me really was, hold on, so this is EA, who try and monetize stuff even in single player games to one extent or another. Then you've got this big world, and you've got this loot system that they show off that is specifically RNG, random number generated. Yeah, she goes over after they've completed this encounter. She picks up this box. She opens it up, and it's a random chance that she gets this weapon. And she gets this weapon, she seems really happy, but then also we never see the weapon used, so we don't know whether or not it's genuine happiness because it was a good weapon and she's going to get a payoff from it, or just because she got told to sound happy, and so that kind of bugged me. I would have liked to see the character try out the weapon, because often you get a new gun in a game. First thing you do, you equip it, you try it out. You want to find out what it's like. You want to find out if it's better than what you had before. Yeah? And not just on the stats, but how it feels. Yeah? Because that's the one thing that sits with a lot of these games, especially shooters, where it's very immersive and it's very focused in terms of attention. You know how things feel. Yeah? I like playing Grover or Makoa or Maldamba in Paladins as opposed to, I don't know, Cassie, because they feel better to me. It might be the role that I'm filling in as well to one extent or another, but they feel better to me in the moment-to-moment play. And so not seeing that kind of, I don't know, it felt very sterile. And as a result of that, especially considering it's E3, it's a cross-section, it wasn't a hands-on, it was just a clip that they showed us to try and show us what this new amazing game is, and that we need to get excited about it when we still know effectively nothing about it. And that's why I didn't include Anthem in my list of games that I'm more attached to, because it seemed too fake. Yeah, it wasn't just a trailer, it wasn't just a kind of talk through, it wasn't showing the game running live in action where it was obvious. The marketing guy just seemed too scripted. The events in the gameplay seemed very scripted, if not completely, and the actual the people that they had talking over, essentially acting as the players within the demo, within the gameplay. None of what they did and said seemed kind of grounded to me in what you would expect a person that you would just randomly bump into and play with to do. And as a result, I was like, it's going to be a big game. It's going to potentially be the game to bridge the gap between games that have done so well, like Destiny and Warframe, and put it all into one place where you get exploration, where you get the whole rundown of Bartle's taxonomy, which I think I still need to do a video on at some point. But where you'll have people who can kill and dominate, collect and achieve, explore and test, and work with friends and socialize. Yeah, I feel like this game might have the potential to do all that, but we need to see more before I can actually add it to the list of things that I would be like, yeah, this is great. Anyway, I've been talking now for 45 minutes about this stuff, but again, this was something that was positive, it was something that was fun and good. And I just wanted to contrast it, considering even my other video on Monday was games focused, but still not necessarily a good thing. It was still politics and identity politics and people complaining about things that aren't the way that they think they are to one degree or another, you know. But hey, let me know what you guys loved from E3. I realised that I've not really included anything Nintendo, but I'm not a big Nintendo player. I owned a Game Boy Color that I bought from a friend with Super Mario and Pokemon Red when I was 11, 12, something like that. And then after that, like with the various games from Nintendo, they've just not really drawn my attention. The various consoles and things, they've not really meshed with me well. I've not really cared about them. The motion control stuff with the Wii and the Wii U was the Switch, again, it's just like a, well, fine, but I don't really care for many of the games there anyway. So, you know, this is one of the problems with the whole console versus PC thing. You know, if I want to play certain games, then I will potentially have to buy a console in the long run to play those games. But like, I don't know, it's with Nintendo, there's just nothing that draws me to it. And when I took a look at the press conference, I couldn't help but feel that it was just the same old franchises coming up again and again and again, and there's still not an awful lot of new stuff, not an awful lot of interesting stuff to really draw me in. And so I didn't really have anything to add to the list from them, I'm afraid. But as I said, tell me what you guys think. What stood out to you from E3? What are you looking forward to playing most? You know, and as said, just a quick reminder, and just a quick disclaimer as well, I'm not being paid for the Keystone stuff at all, but it's just a game that I'm interested in and has an element of community around it. And if it's something that bridges the gap between some other games that I've been playing on the channel already, I want to do it. But if you're interested in it as well, then go and take a look at the link down in the description there. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the video tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you found this entertaining, then please drop me a like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.